in the quiet shadows of Nova Scotia's deep woods. On the morning of May 2nd, 2025, 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack vanished from their family's modest trailer home on Gairloch Road. No warning, no struggle, no trace. The Sullivan home was miles from town, tucked away on an old gravel path surrounded by dense forest, where cell service faded and time itself seemed to slow. It wasn't the kind of place you stumbled upon. You had to know it was there. Isolated, quiet, still. According to their mother, Angela, the children were playing in the living room, dressed in pajamas, when she stepped outside, just for 5 minutes, to feed the chickens. That's all it took. When she returned, the trailer door was ajar. At first, she called their names. Maybe they were hiding. Maybe Jack had wandered out, and Lilly followed. But the stillness told another story. Their shoes were still by the door. Favorite toys untouched. No signs of a game, no clues of mischief. Just 2 children gone. Angela called 911 immediately. Her voice, described later as trembling but controlled, triggered a countywide alert. Within an hour, the area was swarming with search teams, volunteers, K-9 units, mounted police. The RCMP launched drones over the trees. Helicopters circled. Boats scoured nearby creeks. They mapped the perimeter and pushed deeper into the brush. And yet they found nothing. No footprints leading into the woods. No broken twigs or disturbed leaves. No small socks caught on a bramble. The terrain was rough, muddy in places, but still no trace. Cadaver dogs found no scent trail. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. That kind of vanishing doesn't happen, not naturally. Children don't move silently, especially not in unfamiliar terrain. They call out, they cry, they get stuck. But there was no sound, no scream, not even a whimper. And that's when the unease started to shift. This wasn't just a tragic case of kids wandering off. This was something else, something darker, because the forest doesn't erase people. Something or someone had to have helped them disappear. The questions started stacking fast. Was there a window of time long enough for an abduction? Could someone have crept through the woods, silently entered the trailer, and vanished with 2 children before anyone noticed? Was this a targeted act, or a crime of opportunity? Who would even know the trailer was there, let alone when Angela would be outside? It didn't make sense. Angela and her partner Daniel insisted there had been no sign of forced entry. The back door, they said, wasn't locked. But there were no muddy prints, no tire tracks, and no neighbors to hear or see a vehicle come or go. The nearest home was over a kilometer away. The forest was too thick for drones to penetrate past a certain point. It created a perfect wall, a barrier between the known and the unknown. As hours became days, panic turned to dread. The public began clinging to any theory that gave them a shred of sense. Maybe the children had wandered farther than expected. Maybe they were hiding, afraid. Maybe a wild animal, though experts quickly ruled that out. No blood, no drag marks, no remains, not even clothing. And with each passing day, that initial theory, that this was just a tragic case of 2 kids lost in the woods, felt less believable. Then came the turning point. The first detail that didn't sit right. Why was there no scream? Why didn't the dogs pick up a trail? How could 2 young kids walk 300 meters without leaving a single clue behind? Investigators began retracing steps, questioning neighbors, rechecking the site. But nothing changed. Angela was interviewed multiple times. Daniel gave a statement. And while both insisted they had nothing to hide, their stories weren't airtight. Daniel said he was inside when it happened, said the door didn't make a sound, and that he heard nothing. But others in the community weren't so convinced. Rumors surfaced of shouting at the trailer weeks before, of stress, of trouble. And still, neither Angela nor Daniel were arrested. No charges were laid. Just silence growing heavier with each news cycle. And beneath that silence, online, in Reddit threads and late-night podcasts, the theories multiplied. Some believed it was a stranger, someone who knew the terrain, a predator who had stalked the family. Others blamed the parents, or at least suspected they knew more than they said. And then there were those who couldn't decide what was worse, that someone took the kids, or that no one did. that maybe the forest itself had become a character in this case, hiding the truth under roots and stone. Over 200 volunteers, ordinary people from nearby towns, retired military men, nurses, single parents, students, pushed their lives aside to help find Lilly and Jack Sullivan. For nearly 2 full weeks, the thick forests around Gairloch Road became a human grid system. They walked shoulder to shoulder through heavy brush, climbed over moss-covered rocks, waded through shallow streams, their voices echoing the names of 2 missing children into the quiet void of the wilderness. Searchers marked trees with orange tape, retraced their paths with GPS apps, checked and double-checked every hollow, every ditch, every deer trail. Thermal drones buzzed overhead like mechanical wasps, scanning for any trace of body heat. Cadaver dogs, some of the best in the province, sniffed through swampy terrain and ravines. Every hour that passed felt heavier. The air turned colder. Hope began to thin out. The assumption was, if the children had wandered into the forest, they'd be found. No forest swallows children whole. No 6- and 4-year-old vanish without some trace, scratches, screams, footprints, dropped toys, something. But nothing came. No sound. No scent. Just more of the same. Trees, wind, silence. The creek that ran half a mile from the trailer was partially dammed and drained. Local authorities even brought in environmental engineers to redirect water flow. It was painstaking, muddy work. Still no evidence. No tiny shoes stuck in the mud. No fabric, no bones, no plastic toy. It was beginning to look less like a search and more like a ritual of desperation. Until day 11. That was when everything changed. A volunteer, one who had been part of the original grid search, came across something small, soft, and pink wedged beneath a clump of ferns roughly 300 meters from the Sullivan trailer. It was a blanket. Lilly's blanket. The one she was said to carry with her almost everywhere. The one she reportedly slept with every night. Her name was stitched into the corner in purple thread. It should have been the breakthrough moment, but instead, it raised even more disturbing questions. That area, where the blanket was found, had already been searched. Not just once, but twice. It was part of a mapped zone, logged with GPS. It had been combed, walked through, passed over. And yet, somehow, this small, unmistakable object had just appeared. Some suggested searchers simply missed it, but others weren't so sure. How could a bright pink blanket have gone unnoticed by 2 separate teams? Unless it hadn't been there before. Unless someone came back, planted it, after all eyes had turned away. Forensic investigators moved quickly. They took the blanket to the lab. There was no blood, no hair, no skin cells, no saliva, just microscopic traces of pine pollen, forest dust, and soil. The blanket had clearly been outside, but for how long? Hours? Days? 11 days? No one could say. But the discovery shattered the early theory that the children had simply wandered off. It was the first physical clue in a case that had, until then, felt like a ghost story. Now, it was beginning to look like a crime. The RCMP shifted gears. They declared the case suspicious and launched a criminal investigation. Officers re-entered the Sullivan trailer, wearing protective suits. They seized electronics, phones, laptops, tablets. Every drawer was opened. Every floorboard creaked beneath evidence boots. DNA was collected from bedsheets, doorknobs, bathroom drains. Polygraphs were administered, though no results were ever released to the public. And slowly, the flow of information began to dry up. The updates from the RCMP, which once came daily, became scarce. Press briefings were canceled. Reporters were shut out. It became clear, whether intentionally or not, law enforcement had gone silent. And silence in a case like this is never just silence. It's a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. So the internet stepped in. TikTok sleuths created timelines with forensic-level detail. Reddit threads swelled with thousands of comments, some rational, some conspiratorial, some unhinged. YouTube documentaries began popping up with dramatic thumbnails and ominous music. Armchair detectives dissected grainy interview clips of Angela and Daniel, pausing on every blink, every breath, every awkward pause. It became a kind of digital witch trial. Theories exploded. Some said the children had been taken by a stranger, someone who had stalked the trailer and waited for the perfect moment when the mothers stepped outside. Others believed in a far darker theory, that the children were never outside to begin with, that something had happened inside that trailer, something terrible, an accident, a moment of rage, a lapse in judgment that spiraled out of control. Panic turned to cover up. Evidence was hidden. The door left ajar to stage a disappearance. It was a theory no one wanted to say aloud, but it lingered, like smoke after a fire. Public pressure surged. The Sullivan family became targets. Their address was posted online. Angela was doxxed. Her photos circulated alongside baseless accusations. Strangers messaged her with threats. Daniel, the children's stepfather, became a lightning rod for suspicion, especially after reports emerged that he hadn't joined any of the official search efforts. Some said he stayed inside the trailer the entire time. Others claimed he was barely seen after the first 2 days. That absence struck many as strange, if not incriminating. And Angela, she deactivated Facebook just days after the disappearance. She moved out of the trailer. She cut contact with Daniel entirely, blocking him on all platforms. To many, that raised eyebrows. Why cut ties during the most traumatic event of your life? Why leave the last place your children were seen? Why go dark if you have nothing to hide? Of course, grief affects people differently. Trauma doesn't always look noble, but those decisions cast long shadows, and the internet made sure those shadows stayed lit. Meanwhile, the official investigation slowed to a crawl. No suspects were named. No persons of interest announced. No charges filed. The family was left in limbo. The community grew restless. And through it all, through the noise, the anger, the speculation, there remained a single, terrifying truth. Not a single confirmed sighting of Lilly or Jack had ever surfaced. No surveillance footage. No gas station witness. No hiker finding a shoe. No whisper of movement. They had simply vanished. And in their place, the silence so deep, it began to feel like a second tragedy all its own. In July 2025, more than 2 months after Lilly and Jack Sullivan vanished into thin air, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police made a quiet but chilling update to the case. What had once been listed as a simple missing persons report was now officially reclassified as a possible abduction. It was a shift that, for many, came far too late. But for others, it confirmed what they'd suspected all along, that this was never just about 2 kids wandering off.